Hey everyone, we're back with another video. So, I don't know if you've noticed, but Sanctum's really fun to do, and I'm very much a Sanctum enjoyer. As someone who hasn't enjoyed any of the past few seasons since Scourge, and has basically actively done everything they can to avoid interacting with the league mechanic, I've been having an absolute blast doing Sanctum, and because of that, I wanted to come up with a strategy that lets me do a lot of Sanctums without having to spend too much time in maps, while also making a little bit of profits, basically just rushing Sanctums. And I've been testing it for a little bit now. I did 2 full Sanctum runs with the strategy. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I thought I should share it with you guys. So why don't we get into it and look at how it's done. First things first, I want to mention that there's going to be 2 separate trees. One is going to be for extreme speed, and one is going to be a little bit slower, which is more aimed at making a little bit more money per map that you're doing, but also reducing your Sanctum runs per hour ever so slightly, simply because you'll be spending more time. This is the tree that I first started all of this testing with, and what all the loot at the end of the video will be based off of. And this was a essence and heist focused strategy. I picked up every single node heist related. I picked up all of the essence nodes, and I picked up all of the other freebies that we can do without wasting too much time, such as Harbinger, a little bit of shrines to make it faster, and the improved offerings of the goddess, which just give you quite a lot of money if it does proc. And then always, of course, altars, because altars are insane. What I would say is, from a lot of testing, don't do blue altars. Blue altars kind of suck, and they're only really good in party play, just as has been true for the past few seasons. Red altars give you substantially more income, and they're a lot more consistent. I would much rather walk out of basically every map with a stack of Awakened Sextants or a stack of Chaos or a bunch of Scarabs or a lot of Ichors, rather than doing blue and just praying for a big div card drop or praying for a divine orb altar or any of that. It's very RNG, it's very hit or miss. Exarch's just more consistent, and honestly Exarch's probably just more money. And on top of that, we also have Harbingers, and we're just blocking everything that takes too long to do. I didn't want to waste time doing a Sacred Grove or a Legion or a Breach or so on. They just were a big waste of time, and I just wanted to rush my Sanctums and move on. As for the other tree, this is honestly what I would personally recommend, unless you simply just want to focus on speed. What this tree is instead is one that has all of the heist nodes completely dropped, and instead we're picking up everything harvest related. Harvest is going to make you substantially more money. It's just going to slow your map a little bit, since you have to sit there and do the harvest. With Stream of Consciousness and with all of the buffed harvest chance nodes on the tree, you're going to see a harvest maybe in about 60 to 70% of your maps. So it is going to come up quite often, but it's not going to be the worst thing, especially since Life Force is skyrocketing in price right now. It's going back to what it was worth last season, which is great. On top of that, this is also focusing a little bit more on strongboxes. We're picking up more strongbox nodes, as well as focusing a little bit more on shrines to get a little bit more speed. But we're still doing altar farming, and we're still doing essences, simply because those are just way too good to miss out on. This is also a singular focus tree, because I personally like doing my maps the same this way, but if you prefer to do a shadow shaping tree, that works as well. As for the maps, I personally like doing Strand Crimson Temple bouncing. Some other options, if you want to make a little bit more money instead, is maybe Mesa and Defiled Cathedral bouncing. Both of these are very high value maps right now. They're about 6 chaos each. So if you want to do those 2, you can sell your maps for a little bit more money. But I personally prefer the layout of Strands, and Crimson Temple is worth a decent amount as well. So I chose to do these 2. All of my maps are favorited with Strand plus 1 Crimson Temple. If you don't have all of your favorited slots unlocked, that's fine. Just make sure 1 and only 1 of your maps is Crimson Temple, or whichever map you don't want to run, but is connected to what you want to run, and the rest is what you want to run. So for example, if you want to do Mesa, and then sometimes you wanted to do a few Defiled, you would favor all Mesas and then 1 Defiled. This, with singular focus, will basically completely sustain your maps as long as you have the 4 shaping nodes. This should give you enough map drops to almost 1-to-1 all of your maps for hundreds and hundreds of maps before you finally will go dry. In terms of how the maps are set up, these are simply just Alch and Go maps. I started with Strands. I chiseled them, I alched them, and then I re-rolled them for mods that my build can't do, or mods I don't want to do, such as temp chains. Only other thing I added onto this was elevated essence sextants. These pay for themselves well over and are incredibly worth adding onto what you're doing. The nice thing is about these as well is, since we're only running 1 compass, what you can do is you can add them multiple times over on your void stones. So with this, you can have 64 uses of elevated essence across your 4 void stones, and it only takes 1 charge every time you open a map. This means that you can simply do 4 trades to get these compasses. And then for 2 full Sanctum runs, you can completely forget about them while increasing your income by around 25% or so. Each Sanctum run for me has been taking about an hour or so to do. That means with 4 extra trades and a little bit of extra efforts, we are able to make 25% more money for 2 hours without having to worry about anything else. So I'd really recommend getting these, but if you don't want to do these, that's fine too. You'll just make a little bit less money. And if you don't want to buy elevated, you could also do this with normal ones and just simply have 16 runs at once between your 4 void stones rather than 64. As for how you're running the maps, it's pretty simple. They're just Alch and Go maps. You are just walking in, you're killing everything, you're finding your Sanctum, and then you're killing the boss. If you're doing harvests with this, obviously you want to stop and do the harvests. Prioritize the yellow plants over anything else. Even if yellow plants don't have anything good on them, yellow plants are worth so much more than purple and blue that you should always pick them. And then instead, if you want to prioritize speed and you're doing heists, just simply click all the caches, collect your loot, and then just move on. It's very simple. There's not really much to say. It's just Alch and Go maps. It's really nice. It's actually quite refreshing versus all of my other farming methods where there is a lot going on. There's a lot of mechanics. There is just things everywhere on the screen. It's just very relaxed mapping for quite a lot of loots. If we want to go talk about the loots, there's quite a lot of it. So as I mentioned, I did all this with heist, but personally, after doing 2 full Sanctum runs like this, I'm not really impressed with the heist loots. And I would much rather go harvest myself, even if it meant going a little bit slower. All of the currency was either from altars or from stuff I picked up off the ground. It's all pretty much basic loots. What I'm surprised about is how many chaos this gave, which comes simply from the Searing Exarch altars. I found myself having multiple runs where I would just get over 10C just in raw drops. I think one map as well, I got like 20 Vol Orbs just in a single map. It's Searing Exarch altars are insane. In terms of maps, I started with 32 maps, 32 strands when I did this, and this is what I ended up with. It's mostly Crimson Temples because I was running my strands, but the idea here is as soon as I finish running strands, I would do all my Crimson Temples, and then this would give me twice as many strands as Crimson Temples I ran. I also have a few left over here, so the map sustain is pretty good. You are slightly over sustaining, but not by much, but it's enough to keep you going pretty much indefinitely. On top of that, I got a lot of embers, quite a lot of embers, and then just some other miscellaneous shit. Some random maps, some deli orbs, some invitations. I only got 1 offering to the goddess. I think I got a little bit unlucky with this, but it is what it is. And then the thing that I'm most disappointed about is just heist. So I got a few of these blueprints that are fully revealed, which go for 0.2 to 0.4 div each, and then quite a lot of contracts. Unfortunately, contracts really aren't worth that much right now. And the total heist loot here is about 2 div between the markers, the contracts, the blueprints, which for the amount of points that we invested into it, I'm really not surprised or impressed by how much money this is. And I feel like if we put all these points into harvest instead of making about 2 div, I think we could have probably made 4 or 5 div just in Life Force, since Life Force is worth a lot of money. But the most important thing here is the essences. Essences absolutely rocked, and I was surprised by how good it was with no essence mod on the map device. I ended up collecting 233 remnants of corruption, which is quite an insane number considering how little maps I did. I got 233 in 64 maps. I specifically put all of my essences away just to have a clear slate to know exactly which essences I got doing 64 maps. And yeah, I'm just impressed. It was 233 remnants. If we want to look at the total loot, it is 6.5 div for everything in this tab. Most of the things here are currency, so these prices are very, very close to the truth. I would say maybe this might be plus or minus 0.2 div or so, but I would think that this is about 6.5 div, considering it's just currency, and currency prices are usually pretty stable and pretty accurate, except for divine orbs, but we don't talk about that. As for the total price for the essences, if we use TFT's bulk tool at 90% of ninja price, which is how I would personally sell all of these. I wouldn't sell these individually on trade. I would just dump them to someone on TFT, save myself a little bit of time. We have 5 div here. So between the essences, between heist contracts, and between all of the other loots, we ended up making 12 div from 64 maps. If we do the math on it, that is about 0.2 div per map, or around 54 chaos on average. If I took out the heist, so the 2 div from that, it would be around 47 or so chaos per map, which I think is really great considering these are 1-minute maps where you're just going in, clicking Sanctum, and just killing mobs on your way to the boss. I don't know the exact numbers, but if I were to speculate, if you were to do this with Harvest instead of Heist, I think instead of about 54 chaos per map, you would be probably making around 65 or so, since Life Force does add quite a lot of extra money on top of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it hits even 70 chaos per map. One last thing to mention is this was done over the course of about 2 hours, which puts us at around 5 or so div per hour, just running these maps. I was able to complete a full Sanctum every time. That was 2 hours, also including the time I spent inside the Sanctums, but the loot from the Sanctums isn't here simply because that's a little bit too RNG, and I'd rather like to do a separate video on that. But on average, I would say from my experience and from like all my viewers' experiences, you are making around 2-3 div per Sanctum, usually if you're doing tier 16 Sanctums only. So if we add that onto the around 5 div an hour from this, it is anywhere between 7 to 8 div an hour running maps to get your Sanctums and then running the Sanctums themselves, which I think is absolutely wonderful. Now, I'm a little bit sad that most of that loot is from acquiring the Sanctums themselves rather than doing the Sanctum runs on their own. But I still feel like that is very good money, especially for the league mechanic and especially for how fun it is. Now, that doesn't include anything special like the new hard mode relics. For example, this one that drops an additional invocation. Most of the invocations are currently worth around 3 div, 4 div at minimum, with some of them being worth 20, 40 div or so. If we were to factor these in, I would say it's actually much higher, especially if you get a good invocation, but that's a little bit hard to say and it's a little bit hard to speculate on. So I'd rather just say you're making around 2-3 div per Sanctum on average just in raw currency, plus whatever else you might get from any of the hard modes. I'm happy with this. I'm having fun. I'm going to be doing this for a while since I want to run a lot of Sanctums. So if you want to see this for yourself, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below or come by Twitch and ask me personally. I stream every day. That's it for this video. I'm going to have some more videos on Sanctum soon. I think I might want to do some guides on how to handle and tackle some of the hard modes potentially. I think that might be really fun as future videos, but we shall see. I definitely am going to be covering more Sanctum in the next few days as I'm personally getting into it as well now. And I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoy the future Sanctum ones as well. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and I will see you in the next video. Bye.